I
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research Australia. It's great to be with you in Australia. I'm coming to you from the East Coast of the United States, right outside of Washington, D.C. My name is Rachel Radomski, and I am an executive director and head of patient advocacy and engagement here at Harmony Biosciences. I'm thrilled to be sharing some information today with you all on the TEMPO trial, which is the name of the trial that we're going to talk about today. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. David Seiden, who is the medical director on the trial here at Harmony Biosciences. The full name of our clinical trial is a phase 3 randomized double-blind placebo-controlled efficacy and safety study of pitolisant, followed by an open-label extension in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome. That's what we call the TEMPO trial. If you haven't heard of Harmony Biosciences, we are a pharmaceutical company based outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, specializing in developing and delivering treatments for rare neurological diseases that others often overlook, and that includes Prader-Willi syndrome. We believe that where empathy and innovation meet, a better life can begin for people living with neurological diseases. And it's really been an honor to have been working amongst the Prader-Willi community really for the last 5 or 6 years as we've explored pitolisant in people living with Prader-Willi syndrome and getting a chance to meet and get to know some of your families, travel, attend meetings. So it's a thrill and a joy for us to work with you all, and we're really excited to share some more information with you on our trial. That being said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Seiden to talk a little bit about why we're exploring pitolisant in people living with Prader-Willi syndrome.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, and good day to everyone. Again, my name is Dave Seiden. I'm the Senior Medical Director here at Harmony for Clinical Development and Strategy, and I'll be talking to you a little bit about some background on PWS and pitolisant and some specifics about the trial. So, of course, we all know quite a bit about Prader-Willi syndrome, and really from a 1,000-foot view, it's essentially a disorder of hypothalamic dysfunction. We all know the hypothalamus is an area of the brain responsible for certain critical functions, such as regulation of hunger and satiety, sleep-wake states, release of growth hormone, other endocrine functions, metabolism, control of body temperature, etc. So it's an important area of the brain. And I think an often overlooked, let's say, symptom of Prader-Willi particularly is the issue of sleep and wakefulness. And that's what I'll be discussing in a little more detail. The hypothalamus regulates sleep-wake stability via a number of neuropeptides and how they interact with each other, primarily the monoamines like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, but also two very important neurotransmitters, neuropeptides include hypocretin, also called orexin, and histamine. We're primarily interested in histamine as that is the sort of the underlying mechanism for pitolisant. And histamine neurons specifically help promote and stabilize wakefulness by activating the cerebral cortex and other neurons outside of the hypothalamus. Additionally, histamine can play an inhibitory role on sleep promoting neurons. And as I said, we're talking about pitolisant because its mechanism of action is that it essentially increases histamine levels in the brain. The idea behind the TEMPO trial, of course, is to see if pitolisant will actually improve the level of daytime sleepiness in patients with Prader-Willi syndrome. Next slide. So the question is, how did we get here? Well, our phase 2 trial results in Prader-Willi syndrome sort of led us to this point and led us to undertake this large global phase 3 trial, which we're calling TEMPO. Just a little background reminder, what is a phase 2 trial? Well, a phase 2 trial is done in order to obtain preliminary data on whether the drug in question has the potential to work in people who have the underlying medical condition or symptoms that the drug is meant to treat. In our case, we are looking at patients who have Prader-Willi syndrome and also have significant excessive daytime sleepiness. As I mentioned, it's a little bit of an understudied area of Prader-Willi syndrome. As most of you know, most of the work that's been done on the pharmacologic side of things is looking at hunger and satiation, hyperphagia, some behavioral disturbances, and that's those sorts of symptoms. We are focused in the TEMPO trial on daytime sleepiness. Of course, the other part of a phase 2 trial is to collect some general safety data, looking at adverse effects. And this helps us determine whether or not we would move forward with a larger phase 3 trial like we're doing in the TEMPO study. And then that is the trial that would be used to support approval of the drug. The data that we obtained from phase 2 did show us that positive signal. It gave us what we'll call the proof of concept that pitolisant may be effective in promoting wakefulness in these patients. And we'll be presenting that data at the World Sleep Meeting that's coming up in Singapore. Some of you may be attending that meeting, I don't know, but you can see that data presented at that time. It's been previously presented at the American Sleep Meeting, but this will give us an opportunity to present it to our Asia Pac colleagues as well. Next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about the TEMPO study. I'll talk about the objectives, and I'll review some selected key inclusion criteria, some selected key exclusion criteria, some of the study highlights, and then we'll talk about the clinical trial sites in Australia. Next slide. So the objectives of the study, as I already have alluded to, is to evaluate the impact of pitolisant in treating excessive daytime sleepiness, we'll call it EDS, in people with Prader-Willi syndrome. That's the primary objective. The secondary objectives include looking at whether pitolisant impacts the severity of irritability, which we know is an issue in many of these people with Prader-Willi syndrome, the severity of other disruptive behaviors, and also whether pitolisant impacts hyperphagia. We did see some signals in the phase 2 trial that have led us to designing the trial in such a way that we can also look at pitolisant impacts on these additional domains. And what I mean by that is additional to excessive daytime sleepiness. Next slide, Rachel. So just some selected key inclusion criteria. Of course, this is not all inclusive here, but some of the key ones include that you are 6 years or older at the time of screening, and that you've had a genetically confirmed diagnosis of PWS. Of course, you have to have excessive daytime sleepiness at both screening and baseline, and that's determined by a number of assessments that are given to the participants. And importantly, the participant must have a consistent parent or a consistent caregiver, usually the parent, and preferably the same person throughout the study. So those are some of the selected key inclusion criteria. The selected key exclusion criteria would be if you have previously taken pitolisant, you would not be eligible for participating in the trial. If you have a diagnosis of sleep apnea, whether that's obstructive sleep apnea, central sleep apnea, and that it's not adequately controlled, so if you have adequately controlled sleep apnea, you can participate. You cannot be participating in another study involving another investigational medication, device, or behavioral treatment within 30 days of participating in TEMPO. You must be on stable dose of whatever your current medications are. And if you are able to discontinue prohibited medications, and that's a decision generally that you generally made by the principal investigator, that would be exclusionary if you cannot discontinue. And of course, we want patients to be experiencing enough required sleep that the issue of sleep deprivation is not playing a role in the patient's daytime sleepiness. So you have to have a certain required amount of sleep based on your age. Next slide. So just some of the high-level study highlights here. We're looking for approximately 134 study participants that will be randomized globally. As I mentioned earlier, there needs to be active caregiver participation. That's required for the participant to be enrolled. And the overall study duration and the participation patient is expected to be about 4 to 6 months, with an option to continue into an open label extension if eligible. Next slide. Just the general study design is laid out here. You can see there's a screening and baseline period where eligibility criteria is met or not met, and that's up to 45 days. There's an 11-week treatment period in which patients are randomized, that is, randomly assigned to either pitolisant or placebo. And I'll mention also at this point that dose of pitolisant is based on weight, not the patient's age. And then if eligible, there's a 52-week open label extension period where patients are, of course, on pitolisant. And then there's a follow-up period following the last study dose, which goes on for about a month. Next slide. Now, just regarding that, some specifics of the treatment period, that 11-week treatment period. Again, the study drug is based on the participant's weight. And patient would, again, be getting study drug or a matching placebo. And patients will take their first dose of study drug on day 1. So they would have a baseline visit. They would go home, and the following morning they would start taking their study drug. And they will take that drug once daily in the morning upon awakening through day 77. Study patients and their caregivers will have a telehealth video visit on day 22. They'll have insight visits on day 29, 57, and 77. And by the way, we've thought this through to try to make this trial as user-friendly as possible, limiting the number of inpatient visits. We understand that that can be difficult. These visits can be difficult, in terms of patients who have PWS with temper tantrums and hyperphagia issues and so forth. So we've tried to make this as less onerous on the caregivers and the patients as possible. Day 77 is the end of the treatment visit. And at that point, eligibility is reassessed to see if the patient is interested or eligible to move into the open label extension part of the trial. If the patient elects not to enter into the open label period, there are several telehealth follow-up visits after the last day of study drug. Next slide, Rachel. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Rachel.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So we're very excited to be sharing this with the Australian PWS community, and we're excited to share that we have Australian sites that are screening for Tempo now available. You see the sites on the slide here: Queensland Children's Hospital, Sydney Children's Hospital in Randwick, as well as in Westmead, and the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. And just to answer a question that we get commonly, if your child or the person that you are caring for living with PWS is not a regular patient of the doctors that you see here at the sites we have available, that doesn't matter. You can still reach out to either Harmony or these sites via the contact that you see on the screen and inquire. This does not have to be your child's physician in order to be considered for the trial. So we encourage you to reach out if you're interested. That being said, you can also reach out to us. My email at the bottom there is advocacy@harmonybiosciences.com. And my colleague Anne, who runs clinical operations for the Tempo trial, she can be reached at clinicaltrials@harmonybiosciences.com. So if you have any questions or would like additional information on Tempo, please feel free to reach out to one of the sites that you saw on the slide previously, or reach out to us. We're happy to help facilitate that for you. So thank you again for having us today. Thank you for inviting us to present to the community. And we wish everyone well and hope to hear from you if you're interested.